Welcome. Today we're joined by David Locke, managing broker at Duca, to tell us all about the condo turnover transition. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit more about Duca, and then we'll dive in.
Absolutely. Duka Property Management has been established in Ontario for approximately 26 years. 2 years ago, I partnered with the president of Duca, Alton Nani, and we opened up Duka Property Management BC. Since then, we've been slowly but surely expanding our footprint out here, specifically in the development space. A lot of our buildings have been in the development space. And then prior to that, obviously, I worked with another brokerage in the development space as well. So I'm very happy to be here with you today and everyone who's joined us to hopefully educate and inform.
Fantastic. Well, we've got the right man for the job because today we are talking about that transition process. David, at a high level, what does this mean?
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing to understand specifically about, the developer to owner transition is what takes place from the back end. Owners move into their new homes and they effectively get their closing notice. 10 days later, they are paying their first, getting their mortgage funded and go and live. That's it. They don't actually see what happens in the beginning. So, obviously the most important thing is to understand, what is turnover? And the turnover, by definition, specifically for condos and strata corporations, other condominium developments, is the transfer of ownership control from the developer to the newly formed strata. It also is important to understand that this is the actual start of the owner governance of the strata. So the strata corporation, while formed by the developer in advance of the first units completing, actually doesn't have ownership control until we start to get to the later portions of this presentation, which I'll explain. Finally, it's the legal, financial, and operational responsibility shift. Legal being, who's insuring what and who's responsible for this property.
Right.
Financial, now that the strata is paying fees. And then operational responsibilities, obviously outside of warranty, routine maintenance, and also, governance of the contracts that the strata has to have. Elevators elevate, the janitors are cleaning, the landscapers are doing the landscaping. I've got someone who says that they cannot hear us.
Really?
In chat. Let's see.
Well, we can hear each other. Is it only us?
Let's find out.
Let's find out. That would be a shame. All of us talking to absolutely nobody.
Yeah.
Let's see. While we're waiting and having that looked into, I will just ask our team to check. I sure want them all to hear us, and I know it's in several networks. I've asked our team to check as well, David, but while we're waiting, let's proceed because
someone says all good on their end. So, we'll proceed.
Great. So who are the key players in this? You've talked about the developers, you've talked about the owners. So those are the first two on this list.
Correct.
Who else is in the circle?
So we've got obviously the property management team, called them strata managers, community managers, property managers, but they're the day-to-day operations experts, or should be the day-to-day operations experts. Legal and engineering professionals. Obviously, every management company is supported and their managers are supported by third-party professionals. But with new developments specifically, it's very important to have a solid legal team that's going to assist you with questions, but more important than anything is your engineering professionals. These, warranties and issues that come up with these buildings, they're not able to be determined on their own by a strata manager or a council member. You need to have these third parties. And finally, you've got the warranty provider. So this is the, BC mandated 2510 new home warranty that all new developments have. That warranty provider is a prepaid warranty service that is paid for by the developer and provided to the homeowners and to the strata corporation. That warranty provider is independent, and that warranty provider comes in and works with the strata and the developer to obviously find resolution to the future warranty things that can come up.
That's fantastic. And walk us through the timeline. What happens before and after this transition?
So this is important to understand from a timeline perspective. Everything that I'm talking about here takes place before the owners receive their closing notices. This is before the owners are notified that their unit's completing. It's before the owners move in. It's before the Strata Corporation is even filed in most cases. So what happens, and again, I say in most cases, because sometimes this is a truncated timeline, sometimes it's a little longer, but 3 to 6 months is you have a pre-turnover meeting. That pre-turnover meeting with the development team is to ensure that the management company that's chosen, and I say chosen because the developer chooses the management company to onboard and manage the strata that is being completed. All of that timeline, that 3 to 6 months, is gathering information. There's a lot of items that come up specific to operations that the management company needs to be made aware of, whether it be cost sharing, specifics for parking allocations, building setup, utility setups,
Right.
you name it. There's a lot of items that need to be discussed. That formal pre-turnover meeting is just data dump. We have to take that, we have to read it, understand it, ask our questions, and then about 1 to 2 months before, we have what would be a formal turnover meeting. This is when the developer is providing the management company with building maintenance manuals. It's providing us with warranty information, trades lists, and other things that we need to get everybody lined up so that, again, when the owners move in, they can simply move into their new home. They don't have to worry about the garbage being taken out and the elevators breaking down and things like that. From there, as part of that turnover meeting, again, we have the official turnover of documents and details from the developer to the management company. The developer is also going to provide us with all of the registered documentation. This is going to be the strata plan, the schedule of unit entitlement, the PID listings so that the strata forms can be done, parking and locker lists. All of that is provided by the developer to the management company via their lawyers or direct. The developer often many times enters into, on behalf of the strata, many contracts. These could be leases, specific agreements that they're bound to with the city, maybe for a public art installation or some sort of car share or e-bike application. The developer turns those contracts over to the strata. They cannot do so until the strata plan is registered. So this all takes place in this kind of turnover meeting. So what the developer does is they actually enter these contracts under their development name, whatever, 123 Development Corporation Limited.
Yeah.
When the strata plan gets filed, they will then allocate and assign that contract over to the strata.
Interesting.
Utilities are next, obviously, Fortis, geothermal, hydro, all of those utility accounts, telecommunication accounts. Again, there's a lot of items that you don't see as an owner moving into a new home. The fire panel needs a telephone line and an internet line and things like that. Finally, we have the key handover, which from a strata management perspective, the strata must have access to every common area door, every padlock, every access point to common areas, not to the units, but to everywhere that is in the common areas. So we actually are given full access keys, multiple sets of full access keys that then need to be redistributed to the applicable trades, whether it be the plumbing and mechanical contractor or the electrical technicians, things like this. And the final item on this list is a big one, which is the CRF seed funds. So every strata has a contingency reserve fund. And that contingency reserve fund needs to be seeded. And the seeding of that reserve fund is 10% of the disclosed operating budget. The developer is required to pay that to the strata in advance of the first unit completing. So all of this, again, is a conversation that takes place from the management company to the developer. And all of the organization of this information is the responsibility of the management company in trust for that new strata that is yet to be formed yet.
David, there's a lot that could be fumbled in this process. How many of these have you been through?
You lose count, but I would say I have to be I have to be under 60 but over 40, I would say. So
Amazing.
it's been a
Amazing.
lot.
So this is as complicated as it sounds at a high level. You've been through it enough that it's routine for you. As this handover completes, now you've got the keys to the common area, and obviously every common area that you've outlined. Before the individual owners can close, the CRF needs to be seated. Now what? How did they get their first keys? Yeah. What does it look like as the owners take the reins?
So when the owners receive their closing notice, that process on how does the owner get their keys. So every developer operates on the same standard, which is you cannot receive possession of your unit until at least 24 hours after completion. Completion, by definition, or for ease of definition, is money changing hands. So when you've actually paid for your unit, consider that to be completion. 24 to 48 hours later, you get legal possession of your unit. Now, the developer in question, whoever it is, they set their own process and procedure for that key handover. It could be a customer care representative. They could have a team, a Rennie MLA or one of the partners marketing group, one of the major, marketing and sales type houses that do that for them. But that right. process of getting the keys is not from us. We actually, I don't say we don't want to be involved as a management company, but we shouldn't be involved as a management company. And the reason being is it's a legal contract between the new owner and the developer to purchase their home. So that aspect of key handover is between the two of them. By having the management,
we're not a party to that process.
Exactly. And it does blur the lines in relation to primary, secondary clients and how that works. We want to make sure that we're here for owners. We want to be able to know what that process is. We want to be able to communicate that process, assist the developer if we need to in relation to, this person is, can you remind everyone to park in this area when they get their keys, stuff like that. We want to be there for the community. We want to be there for those new residents, but we don't want to be the ones that are there handing out the keys, by no means. So, what happens next is we have to, as the management company, at the direction of the developer, call a first annual general meeting. That first annual general meeting is tied to those completions that I just mentioned. And when we get to 50% plus one of the units completing, we have 6 weeks to call the annual general meeting. Not often, but it is happening more because obviously units aren't selling as fast as they used to. There could be a delay, meaning we don't reach 50% plus one. In that case, it's 9 months. So we have to call the age.
9 months from first close?
From the first close, correct. So 9 months from the first close or 6 weeks after 50% plus one, whichever comes sooner. So that is what determines the first annual general meeting. As the management company engaged by the developer, we are the ones to compile that notice. The budget that goes within that notice must be based on the interim budget that was disclosed in the disclosure statement. The disclosure statement that you get when you sign your paperwork and your documents says how much your strata fees are, I should say. Now, that budget from time to time has to be amended. So sometimes, when we get actual contract values and things like this, we end up having an increase on that budget. Not always, but sometimes. Yeah. Now, that annual general meeting, as I mentioned in my second point, it also sets the fiscal year end. So the Strata Corporation, again, being newly formed, assuming that we have our annual general meeting today, August the 6th, we'll have a fiscal year end at the end of August. So that fiscal year end will now be August 31st. And that is now the fiscal year end I'll say forever, but there's ways to change your fiscal year end. But for layman's term, it sets your fiscal year end and you don't change it. It also elects the Strata Council. So that meeting, along with approving that first operational budget that's based on the interim budget, it also allows the Strata to elect its first council. minimum of 3, maximum of 7 council members. Again, up until this point, the executive decision making has actually been by the owner developer. So the developer is the one who's making decisions as the strata council until we have this council formed.
Interesting. Now,
Yes.
I have questions on that. So, I mean, I understand that the council is elected at the AGM, but in this first one, how do you find out who's going to be willing to volunteer for Strata?
That's a good
council?
question. So one thing that's good about Strata is you get to self-nominate. It doesn't require someone to say, I nominate Thomas to be a council member. So what we do is when we send out our notices, and most companies will be the same as us, they will actually have a note on a cover page that says, you know, if you're willing to stand for council, please reach out to X email. And then that person will read that, hopefully, and will obviously come forward. In many cases, though, we actually have owners, new residents, new owners, reaching out to us well in advance of that notice, saying, hey, just letting you know, I'm excited to live here now. You know, I'd love to be on council. And then it's our job, again, with all the other data and information that we're aggregating, to obviously track that and then make sure that we can include that person, you know, for that vote when the time comes.
Excellent. So you get proactive volunteers coming forward in most cases.
Sometimes you know, that's funny because the smaller new developments usually have full councils and the larger new developments usually have small councils. I don't know why, but you know, you'll have 3 or 4 people that are on the council for a 400 unit tower downtown, and you'll have 7 people for a 35 unit condo building, you know, in you know, Mount Pleasant or something like that. It's just the nature of Strata. But you know, in any event, I always recommend to everyone, it's important for you to be on council at one point in your life. It's a good learning experience. It also gives you some perspective into the day-to-day operations of your actual property that you own in. Lets you understand the nuances of you know, what it is when a complaint comes in and how it's actioned. So again, especially for new owners coming in, living in condos for the first time, very good for you to be on council, or alternatively to sit, you know, on a committee. But back to this slide here, we've got the final item is it's the date in which all manuals, records, contracts, and drawings must be provided by the developer to the strata. So one piece of this puzzle is that there are legislative requirements for the developer. This is information requirements that the developer must give to the strata. I would say 98% of developers are good at it's a data dump. So, you know, as long as they have an easy way to dump data on you, they're usually pretty good about getting it over to you. But the most important part is the why. Why is the strata required to have all of this information? And a lot of this actually ties into their new home warranty. So the new home warranty says, how can the strata maintain mechanical systems and a building envelope to keep it warrantable if they don't have a manual to tell them how to do so? How can they go on?
David, typically,
please.
How often do you get this information before, when you're having your kind of internal handover meetings before the AGM? It seemed like you got a lot of this. Is this just the contractual obligation?
All of the items that we get in that that initial transfer of information meeting 1 to 2 months prior, that is when personally I press to get the bulk of the information. There are certain things that you can't get, such as as-built drawings. They take some time to finalize with their consultants, but we'll make sure we have all of the IFC drawings, the issued for construction. So by meeting with the developer in advance, by being proactive and organized, not to toot my own horn, you allow yourself the ability to check all of these boxes that you have in your transition schedule well in advance of the annual general meeting. So at this annual general meeting, we're able to happily report that the developer has met all of their obligations under the Strata Property Act. If they haven't, then we also have to report that. So,
and what are the common challenges?
So, you know, again, without making it too simple, you know, the biggest challenges that I see during the transition from developer to owners is operating budget shortfalls. That's the main one, the number one that I've seen. And what happens a lot of times is that a developer will do a disclosure statement and several amendments. And what will take place is the budget will not be amended as much as it should be, meaning a budget that was produced in, say, 2022, it may be okay overall for insurance and several line items now because the market is cyclical, it goes up and down. But mechanical maintenance and elevator maintenance have all gone up, 20% over this time period, meaning there are shortfalls in the budget that need to be addressed. That shortfall results in an increase at the first annual general meeting. So owners will, they get their possession documentation. They say their strata fee is $350. They've all budgeted for $350. And then we're those people who have to say, well, we've done a review of all the contract documents and everyone now needs to pay $390 average. So that budget shortfall obviously needs to be justified, of course. But it's a big piece of the challenge because people will say, well, we are brand new. How can we have to pay more money? But it's because the budget that you originally completed on is not current to 2025 or 2024. It's 4 years old.
So some of that's genuine, and some of it might have been a little optimism on the part of the
Correct.
developer. They're on the hook for a little bit of this, aren't they?
Correct. So when you have the interim budget, you have what's called the interim period. Now, the interim period, there's a lot of, first, but the interim period begins the first day of the month after the first completion. So in the case of August, it would begin September the 1st, and it ends the last day of the month after the first annual general meeting. So normally the interim period is 30 to 60 days. The interim period, there's a calculation that's made if there's a budget surplus, what happens with the surplus, and if there's a deficit, there's penalties against the developer. So it's in the best interest of the developer to produce an interim budget that is operationally sound to work for a full year, because it allows them, the developer, to know that they won't be penalized. In most cases, though, even if the budget is underfunded, the interim period actually doesn't go into a deficit position because it's such a short period of time and there's so few expenditures for the strata, other than obviously your routine maintenance contracts and everything like that. There usually is a bit of wiggle room. But increasingly, we've seen that there are budgets that are going into deficit positions, interim budgets, and then that results in some, there's thresholds for penalties to the developers that I won't get into because it's a bit technical in that regard. But the goal of the developer, whenever I work with developers, I say your goal should be that you can transition from your interim budget directly to your first AGM, and the only thing you're doing is moving money in between the line items. So, maybe lower insurance by $20,000 and add it to this line item over here, but the overall total doesn't change. That is a perfectly disclosed budget, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to be right several years in advance too. You're not doing this 3 months in advance. You're often doing this 3 years in advance. So certainly there's an opportunity for this common challenge to arise. What are the other common challenges you've got?
So miscommunication among parties and incomplete documentation. And I say miscommunication with a smile because the problem that happens a lot is, like you said about, it's hard to be right when you disclose a budget 3 years in advance. In many cases, developers will speak with me 2, 3, 4 years before a building is completed. Meaning I'll be working with the developer on budgets to give them a preliminary budget that will go into their disclosure statement. It's my job now to remind the developer that they're doing disclosure statement amendments through this time period. Let me do a budget update too. Let's continually update this budget. Now, the miscommunication mostly comes once the strata is formed, and it's about understanding primary and secondary client obligations. The developer is my client as a primary client up until the strata corporation has been formed. At that point, the developer is no longer the primary client. They're actually the secondary client. And in our agency agreements on new developments, it actually indicates the developer as a secondary client. We have a fiduciary obligation to the strata to make sure that they're obviously number one. But in the sense of educating the ownership group, it's my job to tell the owners that paint color on the wall isn't a deficiency. Right? The fact that you don't like lime green carpets doesn't mean it's deficient. It's a design choice that you don't agree with. That's an education piece from me to them, helping as a secondary client to the developer. But it's also my obligation to tell the developer, you need to get on this and you need to do this and to push and to use the warranty procedures and everything like that. So it's a very fine line. A lot of times stratas, specifically management companies, don't like to work with new developments because it's very hard to navigate that line. And a lot of times stratas will move on from their initial management company, whether they're unhappy because, warranty items or, there's not enough communication, whatever it may be. But what I find is if you communicate clearly, specifically with ownership, strata council, developer, be transparent in relation to that communication, forwarding full email threads with the developer, not hiding anything, it alleviates that concern. And again, fully disclosing to everyone, listen, I'm everyone's seeing what everyone's saying here. So don't think that there's secrets, right? Now, incomplete documentation has to do with, from time to time, not getting those manuals, not getting, those warranty documents. Now, you will always get them because it's a mandatory requirement, but not getting this information promptly, what happens if there's a leak? Who are we calling? Who is the direct contact? Who is the one that's obligated to fix that at no cost to the strata? The last thing that we want are secondary trades coming in, the strata being billed, and then we have to charge back a party and chase them down for money on behalf of the strata.
Right. That makes sense. Absolutely. Well, transparency is a recurring theme, David. We hear it a lot, whether it be strata council operations or this sort of turnover transition or even relations between neighbors. Communication is critical. So interesting to see that starts right at the beginning.
The final one is construction deficiencies. And again, I wouldn't say that this is a challenge so much as it is. It's not a challenge for the ownership. It's a challenge for the management company. Managing expectations and communicating the deficiency and warranty process is a huge part of my job. For my managers at Duca, I don't expect them to educate on this topic. It's my job to speak with the council. It's my job to have an information session with the ownership group to ensure that they know what they should expect from the development team. People think that because it's a warrantable defect that the developer is going to drop what they're doing and they're going to run to their unit or the common area and fix it today. And it's important. No, yeah, it's crazy. But what I always tell people is, how to communicate with the developer. It's people, they invest in their home, $500,000 plus or whatever it may be. They see an issue. They're unhappy about this issue because of the money they've paid. And what do? They report it, and they may be aggressive in how they report it. But people forget there's a human being on the other end of that email. And that human being, who's an employee of the developer, they had nothing to do with the construction of your unit. They are on the back end, has to take what you've said to them, and they're supposed to help you. So, the old adage, you get more bees with honey. Sometimes, whilst being frustrated, take a moment to communicate calmly, clearly, and you probably will get someone on the other side who's more willing to help you because they may have a bad day too, right?
Yeah, and you want them to be sympathetic to your
Correct,
issues. They know that you've spent a lot of money investing in your unit and that it is your home and that it is important to you, and that's all fair. But trying to get a resolution that's satisfactory will go much smoother for you if you're nice about it.
Correct. So, this kind of goes back to hiring engineers and hiring the right people, obviously on an individual owner basis. Owners are not hiring engineers to review their common area deficiencies. But when it comes to 15-month, 2-year, 5-year, 10-year, the Strata Corporation is engaging independent third-party engineering firms, independent roofing contractors, independent mechanical engineers, electrical code consultants. We will obtain those quotes. We will then have the Strata Council approve one of those vendors to do an objective review of the property. But once that review is done, in many cases, some of these towers, they could have 300 or 400 deficient items that are identified, ranging from something as simple as caulking that isn't complete to, releveling of patios that needs to be done and failed membranes, things like that, big and small. that whole process
Right.
and communicating what that process, it's our job to speak with not only the developer to find out what we need to communicate on their behalf, but also what is reasonable and unreasonable. And that's something for the reasonability test of this. It's only experience can tell you. I can't tell you that it's 6 or 8 or 10 months. I can tell you that in most cases, whether it be Travelers, Pacific, Aviva, National Home Warranty, the start to end process once they receive a 15-month warranty list of deficient items is about 8 to 12 months. And that would be on the fast side of things. I've seen as long as 20,
right?
Because there are many things that can be weather dependent. So if they don't get something done in one summer, they have to physically wait for the seasons to change. So that can add time as well. But in most cases, the bulk of everything takes 8 to 12 months. And there will be outliers in that 12 to 16 month range. So again, it's long.
It's fascinating. I had no idea it was that long, and I had no idea the range of issues that you would be looking to raise or to mitigate that affect everything from the most simple quick fix to something that might be quite time consuming and expensive.
Correct. And the final thing with the construction items will be obviously fire, flood, loss of property. Those type of items get addressed immediately. There's no delay. It's just the more finishing items that I find that people need to be educated on, because the expectations and reality, they don't always meet in the middle.
And I understand that you've got pride of ownership. You purchased something. You're very invested in seeing it the way that you want it to be, and I guess this reasonableness must tick in for those individuals as well, and know that it will be resolved, but on a more realistic time frame. David, talk to us about best practices.
So, when I was working on this, I was thinking, what can I say? What can I do? What can I say to someone, who may be listening, who's a new owner, and perhaps managers if they're working with new developments for the first time. And the first one I could think of is educate ownership from the outset of completion on what to expect from you as a manager, meaning what are your communication styles? How do you work on a day-to-day basis? And how the strata corporations operate? How are decisions made? When someone says, I have an issue and I want to see a dog waste bin receptacle put in the garden area, we can't just buy that for you. We have to go and get a quote. We have to go to the Strata Council. We have to take certain steps to make sure that this decision is made properly. And that obviously it's something that's in the best interest of the strata. These types of communication and education, it's the responsibility of the property management brokerage in conjunction with the Strata Council. So again, I don't like to say that the Strata Council is responsible for educating, but they are responsible for towing the line and agreeing with the education that's being provided. If we're saying we need to have an information session or we want to send out mass communication, the best thing we can have is the support of the Strata Council. We don't want a council who says, don't talk to anybody, don't do anything. So, it is a team effort. The second one is, and again, this is a hot topic. Committees can be a lot of extra work, but they can also help in many ways. And what I mean by that is strata councils can become overwhelmed. And a new strata council coming in place, dealing with a lot of individual items, many times you have 1 or 2 council members who do a lot of the work, and you've got a couple of council members who don't do much. And those council members who do a lot of work get miffed, and they get resentful, and they end up now potentially that I don't want to be on council anymore. And now these individuals who are your best ally in helping you, maybe meet contractors on site or do something, are no longer there. So what I find is sometimes if you establish committees, again, whether it be a social committee to keep community engagement going, maintenance, if there's concerns with, ongoing hot water issues, which is a big one, so that they can help with the communication on behalf of the council, warranty to help again with the communication. It can take some of the load off of those individuals that are elected to council. In many cases, there's many people who are, there might be 10 or 12 people who want to be on council at an AGM and only 7 get elected. Well, guess what? Let's go talk to those 5 and let's get them on some committees. They can be part of the process.
Well, that's great. It's got different skills and interests as well. So you might find that there is someone who's willing to pick up that social aspect and join that committee to create a bit of a sense of community. You might find someone that's interested in landscaping that can help you with that aspect. And again, that it sounds like the more engaged you get your community members, the smoother it goes for everyone. So I like that one.
Set clear communication protocols and ensure documents are saved and organized. Every management company will have a comment to say about another management company's file folder save systems. But the most important thing is that everything that the Strata has needs to be accessible, right? We have requirements to keep things, whether it be 5 years, 7 years, indefinitely. All of that information needs to be saved. And when you have a new development, and this is a reason why I actually enjoy new developments, you have nothing saved. There's no one to blame but yourself. You can't come and say, oh, well, this document wasn't. No, everything that we get, we can save. We can have a naming structure that's easy. Nothing can be lost. So if you do it right from day one, it's easy to maintain it moving forward. The hardest thing to do is to unpack, as someone who works in tech, unpack raw data and have to open things and review things and do that type of situation. So communicating protocols as well as documents and saving is a huge piece of the smooth transition pie. And then there was a comment here which ties to number 4 about when you engage these engineers, it's our job to, as a management company, track the warranty expiry dates. And it's very important that those dates are not exceeded, even by a minute, right? The Strata loses its access to its warranty coverage should it not meet its obligations. And the liability of actually this is another reason why some management companies don't like new developments, because the liability, should that date be missed, falls on the management company. So it's important to have adequate tracking in place, whether it be reminders, whether it be CRM systems or whatever it may be. On the internal side, your internal controls are very important because, again, like Ritika noted, the homeowners might lose their right to claim repairs if you miss these timelines, right? So these are what I would say are the best practices for a smooth transition.
Excellent. Those are fantastic, David. I know that we've had a couple of additional questions come in, so I think we'll flick across to those and address a couple of them before we wrap today. We had this discussion earlier about the process for the handover and the contracts that were signed by the developer, but who's responsible for the contractual obligations made by the developer prior to turnover once the owners take control?
So the developer is responsible for the monetary and contractual obligations up until the first day of the month after the first completion. One thing with new developments is you'll have a lot of first day of the month after the first and first day of the month after the last and things like that. Now, the reason that the developer is responsible for the financial and contractual obligations is because when the first unit completes, the Strata has no money. The Strata fees begin. If the first unit completes today, the Strata fees begin September the 1st. So contractually, it cannot pay and cannot operate on its own until September 1. So everything that happens in that first prior to and that first month of completions, you can call it what you want. Most management companies will call it a stump period. It's not part of the interim period. There are invoices that the Strata may receive and pay, and the Strata actually gets to recover that money dollar for dollar due from the developer. There's no developer in the city that disputes this. It's obviously because there's no money, right? The Strata fees haven't started. And that is the answer to the question is it's the developer is responsible for, again, these would be hydro bills, water, sewer, Fortis, mechanical maintenance, landscaping, even the first month's management fee. They're responsible for that, depending on when your management fee starts as a brokerage.
Makes sense. If there was one thing that you wish developers understood better about this transition, what would that be?
Communicating. There's a lot of things that a developer can do and say that will make things better. I've had developers who purposefully didn't complete wallpaper on interior walls, and they didn't do it because they were worried about damage, right? When people move their items in.
Right.
They didn't communicate that.
Right.
We can't communicate that for them. And because they didn't communicate that, owners moved in and said, well, this isn't a finished hallway. This is a joke. What's going on? And now you've got a group of owners who are automatically have their backs against the wall and they're angry over something as simple as, and I tell developers this all the time, give us a letter, give us anything on your letterhead, and we will mass communicate it through our communication portal on a daily basis. Let us be the vessel to communicate for you, but they have to be the one to communicate to us. So that's the biggest thing, to be honest. As long as stratas get communication and they have weekly, monthly updates on as required, in most cases, people are very reasonable. In most cases.
That makes a lot of sense. David, your wealth of knowledge on this process has been enlightening for me, and I'm sure will be a huge help to everyone that's going through it, whether they're involved in a pre-sale transaction or they're a developer that's looking at kind of completing their first small strata. I think that's fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Next week, we'll be joined by Jamie Burke of Burke by Burke, who will be telling us all about real estate marketing 101. I'm looking forward to that one. And David,
thank you.